Hello, my name's Rob Edwards and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today I have changed my mind. When I set up to record today, I had plans to do another episode of The Natter. But I've got stories to talk about. I've got things I wanted to say. I saw Shang-Chi at the weekend, and while it is far too late to do a full-blown review of it, I have thoughts, and maybe I'll share them on my channel later this week. But I didn't really feel it sitting down today. I could have talked about the fact that Doctor Who has taken its next tiny step towards marketing for season 13, ramping up before the release. But it was like a 2-second video before Strictly Come Dancing, and I don't really have much to say about it, except that, promising signs that the show is coming. And there was one other reasonably big story in the world of science fiction and fantasy and movies and the like, but I can't for the life of me think what it was. No, it's gone. But all that to one side, because there is something I really want to talk about, something which I am genuinely extremely excited for, and that is Babylon 5. So, if you haven't heard, there is a new reboot of Babylon 5 being created at the CW, under development at the CW, with the original writer and showrunner Joe Michael Straczynski back showrunning this series as well. And while I am extremely excited by that, I do have concerns. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk what the show needs to do right to be, in my mind, a success. Before I get into that, though, a very quick history of my own relationship with B5. I loved the show, but it wasn't always the case. When it first came out on Channel 4 in the UK, I gave it a chance, but it didn't really sing to me. It didn't really excite me particularly. I watched the first 3 or 4 episodes and it just wasn't singing to me, so I dropped it. I'd got other stuff going on at the time, so I didn't need to add it into my watch schedule. But a couple of months later, a friend of mine was talking about the show, and he said that I had to give it another chance. That, okay, the first few episodes were a bit ropey, but once you got into what the show was actually trying to do, it was a must-watch. And I let him show me some highlight episodes from season 1, basically. We skipped all the filler and just looked at the really sort of arc-heavy stories. And when I could see what it was trying to do, I was all in. I have watched all of season 1 now, and I enjoy the start of season 1 now more than I did when I tried to watch it the very first time, because I understand the tiny little hints here, the tiny little world-building elements over here, all contributing to the big picture. But at the time, all I really saw was the slightly wooden sets, the slightly wooden acting, and it was hard going. So, if this show is going to hit the ground running, it needs to do some specific things. And the first thing it needs to do is it needs to get the casting right. At the end of the day, this show, the original version of Babylon 5, absolutely sang because of people taking on roles like Londo Malaria and Jakar and making them work. JMS, brilliant at sort of bringing together story elements and building towards big picture stuff, but some of his dialogue was a little bit hokey. I mean, maybe he's gotten better over the last years, and hopefully he has, and hopefully there'll be slightly less of everything going to hell in a handbasket and going straight to hell, and that will take us to Babylon 5. I mean, hopefully less of that. But when we have people like Peter Jurassic playing Londo, making him such a relatable character, and his story arc being so fascinating as a result, and paired off against I always get his name wrong, Andrei Katsoulas, I think, Pairing those two together, butting heads the entire show, was one of the reasons why I kept coming back to Babylon 5 all of the time. So they need to get the casting right. They need to get people in there who will hook me in. And they also need to get the makeup and FX right. One of the things the show did, I think, even in the early days when I was kind of not really taken with the show, I was quite impressed by the alien makeup. Whether it is a Narn or a Centauri or a Pak'ma'ra or whatever else, they were distinctive, they were different, they had personality, and that was important. And it did mean that you had to have people willing to make regular appearances in the heavy, heavy makeup that even someone relatively human looking like a Minbari has to look like. And the series special effects were always very much of their time, and they were always quite ambitious, and they weren't always successful. I want to see that again. I want to see them taking some risks with the special effects, really doing cutting edge, really making, whatever the Star Furies end up being this time round. I want them to look right. I want them to look like a spaceship rather than, much as I'm a big fan of X-Wings and TIE Fighters and all the rest of it, the Star Furies always looked to me like the real deal. The next thing they've got to get right, I think, may actually be the most significant thing they have to get right. And they have to get the CW to commit for the long term. Those of you who don't really know Babylon 5, the show was one of the big pioneers in ongoing storylines. It was something which it tells one story. The 5 seasons of the original Babylon 5 tells one story from episode 1 of season 1 right the way until episode 20, whatever it is, in season 5. That is a single story. Each of them have their separate chapters. The arcs develop and change and the regular cast come and go. But there is one singular story, and the show, if it's going to be the success for me, narratively, that the original Babylon 5 was, it needs to commit to that again. And that means it needs some confidence from the CW that they're not going to try and force everything into a season. Now, that is all stuff which I think the show just generally needs to do. But as a reboot to Babylon 5, I think there is a few other things which I think are fundamental to keeping me engaged. All the stuff we've just talked about there is how you win a new audience, and that is brilliant, and I hope they achieve that. I hope that is something they can do, and I hope that this reboot of B5 is going to be a huge success. But for someone like me to enjoy it, there are some things it needs to do for that as well. They need to expand the lore. I get the fact that the arc's going to be different. The story is going to be different. JMS talks about as rebuilding from the ground up. And that's a good thing. I have no sacred cows in this. I do not need Sheridan and Delenn, their story, to be the same in this new reboot as it was in the original show. We may actually have one commander from Babylon 5 all the way through all 5 seasons, unlike in the original show. So there's lots of stuff that they can change, which I'm happy for them to change. But what I want them to do is expand the lore of some of the things they do and do well in the show. For example, Technomages. I would love to see the lore developed for them. We saw a little bit about them in Crusade. We saw a couple of references to them in the main show. I think they are really interesting characters, and perhaps if they don't decide to shuffle off to the unknown while the big threat is coming, we actually get to learn more about them and see more of them in action. That would be fantastic. I would love to see some of the non-aligned races that we didn't get a lot of time with, make them have them be background characters in the original, and maybe choose 1 or 2 of those species to bring more to the forefront this time, to explore a little bit more about They've all gone out of my head name-wise, but let's say the Pakmara again. I want to see more about the Pakmara, maybe have a central character, a recurring character from the Pakmara to give a little bit more of a sense of, who they are. And I think you can absolutely do that with a lot of the support species that we saw around Babylon 5. I want to see some changes. I want things to be new and interesting and exciting. We are still presumably going to get the same arc bad guys. Again, I'm trying not to be plot specific here. I'm naming characters, but I don't really want to say about anything that any of them do. I am hopeful that we can see some changes from things, but I also want to keep some stuff. I want things to be recognisably Babylon 5. ISN, I want that there. The telepaths, I want those there. There's lots of lore elements that I would very, very keen to see included. I'm really interested, if the show does get to a 5-year arc, I'm really interested to see if this time we don't have some fan favourite characters drop through one of JMS's famous trapdoors. If we can get, again, I'm not going to name names of characters. If you haven't watched the original series of Babylon 5, it is well worth it. So I don't want to spoil anything. But there are certain characters who are set up for things in season 1 who, because of problems with the actors or because of a change of direction, they didn't get necessarily to see the end of their story play out. And I'm hoping that this show can avoid that. The other thing that they need to do is look again at pacing. I think it is amazing how little things in early episodes pay off 3, 4, 5 seasons later. It is fantastic, astonishing, beautiful. But we need some more oomph to those early episodes, because I don't want anyone to have the experience I had with Babylon 5 of sitting down to watch the first 4 or 5 episodes of season 1 and just not find anything in it that they find compelling. I really hope that the show goes the distance, finds a new fan base, and it can be as amazing as it was the first time around. I am certainly going to be watching. If it makes it to show. Because in development means in development. It doesn't mean on my TV. So there is always a chance that it will stumble before it gets to that point. Anyway, that's it from me today. Thank you very much for watching. I might be back later in the week to do a short review of Shang-Chi and a couple of other bits and pieces. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time. Cheers.